Today in our tools video, I thought I would talk to you a little bit about some of the tools I use to cut clay, whether in shapes or in just pieces. Stay tuned and see what these are and how they're used. Alright, so the first tool for cutting clay that we're going to talk about are the regular clay knives that are made. These are regular clay blades. They're sold near the polymer clay. Sculpey makes some. I think other brands do too. They're not super expensive because they last for a long time. I've got several variations here. I would recommend that you just buy the plain, straight, standard blade to start with. And incidentally, when people ask me what's the first real clay tool that they need to purchase to successfully do polymer clay, this blade is the thing I recommend for the first purchase, because it works so much better than anything else you can find. I know a lot of people use a regular knife, or like a pocket knife, a regular kitchen knife, or a single-edged razor blade. Those work okay, and I think we all start out at those with one or a multiple of those. There's several advantages to these clay blades. Number one, they are about 6 inches long. Whoops, try doing this under camera. They're about 6 inches long. So no matter what project we're doing, especially in miniature, you're never going to find your blade isn't long enough to go across your clay. They're actually as long as my pasta machine is wide. So a strip of clay out of my pasta machine, I can cut the whole width with this. The other thing is they're very sharp. Part of that is because the blade is very thin. So they don't distort your clay as much as a thicker blade might. Because they're straight up and down. There's no wider at the top. They're a straight blade going down. They don't distort your clay for that reason. Also, there's no barrier on the top like there is with a single-edged razor blade, so you can cut through even a piece of clay that's taller. Let's see if I can set this up. I've got a piece of scrap clay here that I keep on my table for different things. I can cut through it, and my cut is the same. It doesn't distort all the way down because there's nothing at the top to block the blade. With a single-edged razor blade, you can only cut as deep as your blade is tall below that little ridge at the top that's there to protect your fingers. Speaking of protecting your fingers, some of these blades are very difficult to see which is the sharp edge and which is not, especially when you're busy working. So be very careful. There's usually a little cutout on one corner or another, but not always. And I have cut myself many times with a clay blade. And it smarts. And I've done it on video. But I think they're still worth the use. Now some of the other blades I've got here are more specialty blades. These three came in a set with a little handle that you could use on them. And when I saw that in the store, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to try that. The handle was not, I didn't like it. For me, it didn't work very well. It came out too easily. And I think I tried it once, threw it in my drawer, and it's someplace at the very back of my drawer. I haven't seen it in probably 3 years. This blade is also a flexible blade, where this blade that we were looking at earlier is quite stiff. This one is made so that you can curve it and cut a curve if you want to, which can be useful, but I wouldn't recommend this as your first blade. This set also came with a couple of ripple cut blades. And these are neat. I don't use them for Dollhouse miniature food, but I do use, especially this one, for my 18-inch doll food. It's just a little too big of a ripple for the Dollhouse miniature stuff, but it is a fun blade to play with. This bigger one too. They're fun. And you can do some neat effects with them. But again, this is later. Buy a plain straight blade first. So that's my thoughts on those. Let me clean this up roll my clay out, and I'm going to get out some other cutters and show you some other things we can use. Alright, so next to my clay working area, I keep this little plastic tub, and it's mostly filled with clay cutters. And I've got several different types of cutters in here. I'm going to go through one at a time, pull out a few things at a time, and show you what they are. Since this was on top, I'll pull this out. I think this is still, somebody told me they saw this at their local Michael's. This is from Macon's. It's a cutter set, and it was with the polymer clay tools. And it's just this little set of small shaped cutters. There's a star and a heart, and there's a whole bunch. Now they are pretty deep, so many times you do need to have something to poke things out with. But they're all small enough that I can use these to make kind of large-ish doll cookies for the Dollhouse miniatures, or I can use them for shapes for different things. I do use this set quite a bit in all scales, although I will say they are more useful in Barbie size food than they are in Dollhouse miniature food. I'm going to put these back in the way they go later. So that's one set of cutters. These are the ones I started out with, was a bunch like this. They're just nested round cutters, and they all came, got a whole bunch of them in a set. I've got multiple sets here, so I'm not sure which ones go together. I also have a set that doesn't have the rim on the top, that are slightly different sizes, and those are also very useful. You can tell I've had mine for a while though, because they do distort in shape over time, especially if you're not careful with them. And since I throw mine into this tub, they do get bent. I also have other shapes of cutters. I have this one. I prefer the cutters with the lip on the top, if you can get those. They're stronger, so they're more durable, and they're also more comfortable to use. These without the lip on top, although they'll go through deeper clay, by the end of a little while of working with them, my fingers get really sore. This heart, I think, is just a small cookie cutter that I picked up individually at the store. So is this one. And that's an oval. I have several, like I said, I've got multiple sets in here. Another set of clay tools that's really handy are these. And I believe these were sold for making clay roses. But the nice thing about these, I'm just going to do a small one so I don't have to cut more clay. They've got a plunger in them, so you can get the clay pushed out. It does make a mark on the top of your clay, but that's okay. And they come in a lot of sizes. Those are sold specifically for clay tools. I've got other junk in here too, so excuse the mess in my container. Now these are made by the company Kempfer. I will try to remember to put a link in the blog post for these. They're also made for clay, and they also have a plunger, and they come pretty small. I believe this is 3/16 of an inch. Oh, I did not clean this one last time I used it. Bad me. But they are really handy for doing clay cutting. Now, when I first started out, I actually used this for my round cutters. This is actually a pipe fitting from Home Depot. And yeah, it's not very sharp, but it will cut a round out, and it's cheap. These are less than $1, I think. So those are just some of the things I have to cut clay with. Look through what you've got. You can use cookie cutters if they're small. Just be sure that if you use something with your polymer clay, you can't use it with food again. So be aware of that before you start. But having a collection of different cutting tools is really, really handy when it comes not only to making shapes of clay, but for portioning out clay. And we'll talk about doing some portioning out of clay to get consistent sizes in another video. Thanks for watching. Be sure and check the blog post, and be sure and find me on Facebook, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.